The massive crystal doors of the Galactic Confederation chamber slid open with a sound like singing glass. Ambassador Kim Jae-ho stepped forward, his polished black uniform stark against the rainbow-colored walls that stretched impossibly high. Above him, the chamber itself was a marvel of alien engineering, with floating platforms arranged in a perfect spiral that seemed to defy gravity itself. Kim's hands were steady as he activated the holographic projector, but his heart pounded. Against his ribs, this was humanity's moment. After 300 years of radio silence, after decades of proving they weren't just another violent species, Earth had finally earned a seat at the galactic table. The hologram flickered to life, showing Earth's proudest achievements, the new fusion reactors that could power entire continents without producing a single gram of waste. Quantum computers that could solve problems in seconds that would take old machines centuries. Medical nanobots that could repair damage at the cellular level. Honored council members, Kim began, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. Acoustic systems. Humanity is proud to present our latest technological advances. These innovations represent not just our scientific progress, but our commitment to peaceful development. And a sound like breaking glass interrupted him. Counselor Veltheron, whose insectoid body gleamed with a chitinous shell that shifted between purple and gold, was laughing. The sound came from dozens of small breathing holes along his thorax, creating a symphony of mockery. Charming, Veltheron chittered, his compound eyes reflecting the hologram in thousands of tiny fragments. They still use crude matter manipulation. How delightfully primitive. Kim felt his jaw muscles tighten, but he forced his expression to remain neutral. The diplomatic training had prepared him for this. But the reality stung worse than he'd expected. From a platform that seemed to be made of pure starlight, the Luxari representative pulsed with waves of condescending energy. The being had no fixed form, appearing as a constantly shifting collection of brilliant particles that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Their fastest vessels barely reached 1/10 light speed. The Luxari being hummed, its light flickering with what Kim had learned was their equivalent of laughter. My newborn offspring could travel faster using nothing but solar winds. The other council members joined in the mockery. The Nexari Collective, a writhing mass of tentacles that shared a single hive mind, rippled with amusement. The silicon-based rock-born delegates, who looked like walking mountains of precious gems, resonated with deep rumbling chuckles that made the chamber floor vibrate. Kim's diplomatic smile never wavered, even as his stomach churned with humiliation. Earth had spent centuries dreaming of this moment. Humanity's greatest scientists, philosophers, and leaders had imagined joining a galactic community of enlightened beings working together for the betterment of all life. Instead, they were being treated like children at a science fair, showing off baking soda volcanoes to nuclear physicists. Nonetheless, Kim continued, his voice steady despite the burning in his chest. Humanity formally requests inclusion in the Confederation's joint defense initiatives. Our military strategists have analyzed the historical data you've shared, and we believe our unique perspectives could contribute to the laughter exploded again, this time louder and more cruel. Counselor Veltheron's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme amusement in his species. Military strategists? The insectoid being's voice dripped with disbelief. What could your species possibly understand about warfare? You wage conflicts with chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles. The galaxy moved beyond such barbarism when our ancestors were still learning to walk upright. The Vorthok representative, whose crystalline body rang like wind chimes when he moved, added his own dismissive commentary. We have observed your war's a little human. Metal tubes throwing metal slugs, fire and smoke and chaos. It's like watching cave dwellers discover sharp sticks. Kim's hands clenched into fists behind his back, but his voice remained diplomatically calm. I understand our methods may seem unconventional, but unconventional. The Luxury being's light flared brighter. Child. We fight with weapons that can reshape matter at the quantum level. We have shields that can bend space itself. Your species throws rocks and hopes for the best. The chamber filled with the alien equivalent of snickering. Kim looked around at the assembled representatives of dozens of species, each more advanced than the last. The ethereals, beings of pure thought who communicated through telepathy. The shapers, who could manipulate gravity itself. The timekeepers, who existed partially outside normal time and could see multiple futures simultaneously. All of them looking at humanity like an adorable but dim-witted pet. As the session concluded, Kim gathered his materials with mechanical precision. His fingers trembled slightly as he shut down the holographic projector, the images of Earth's achievements fading like dying stars. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Veltheron with mock kindness, your species should focus on more appropriate pursuits, art perhaps, or philosophy. Leave the complex matters of galactic defense to those better equipped to handle them. Kim bowed formally, the gesture hiding the flush of shame and anger that colored his cheeks. As he walked toward the exit, he heard the whispered conversations behind him, a casual dismissal of his entire species' hopes and dreams. The crystal doors sealed behind him with a sound like a coffin closing, 3 star systems away. In the cold void between galaxies, something ancient stirred. Massive forms that had drifted in hibernation for 1,000,000 years began to awaken. Their sensors, older than most civilizations, detected the energy signatures of a thriving galaxy. The devourers had been sleeping long enough. It was time to feed, and in their vast mechanical minds, they cataloged every world, every species, every target in the galaxy, including a small, primitive world called Earth, whose inhabitants played with fire and threw rocks. They would save that one for last. It would barely be worth the effort to consume. The bridge of the Indomitable hummed with quiet efficiency as Admiral Park Sung-min reviewed the morning reports. The massive Earth Defense Force flagship floated in high orbit above Luna, its sleek hull gleaming in the light of Sol. Park had been enjoying his first cup of coffee when the priority alert chimed through the ship's speakers. Admiral, incoming emergency transmission from the Galactic Council, announced Communications Officer Han Minho, his fingers dancing across his console. It's marked with the highest priority classification I've ever seen, A. Park said. Down his coffee and moved to the central command platform. Put it through to the main display. The holographic projector flickered to life, showing the familiar crystal chamber of the Confederation. But something was wrong. Usually pristine walls were cracked, and emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the room. Counselor Veltheron appeared on screen, his normally gleaming chitinous shell now dull and scarred. To all member species of the Galactic Confederation, Veltheron began, his voice lacking its usual arrogant tone, we are broadcasting this message to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The ancient threat has awakened. The display shifted, showing star charts that made Park's blood run cold. System after system marked in red, each one crossed out with the universal symbol for total destruction. The progression was clear and terrifying. Something was moving through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in its path. They call themselves the Devourers, reported Lieutenant Commander Lee So-young, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. She was Park's best tactical officer, a woman who had never shown fear in combat. Seeing her shaken made Park's stomach clench. Ancient machines that consume entire civilizations to fuel their expansion, according to the historical records. They've been dormant for over 1,000,000 years. Transmission continued, showing footage that defied belief. The entire planets reduced to hollow shells, their surfaces stripped away layer by layer until only the molten core remained. Stars themselves seemed dimmer, their light partially blocked by massive mechanical structures that looked like metallic. Spiderwebs wrapped around them. The Vorthok homeworld, Veltheron continued, his compound eyes reflecting the horror on the screen. Population, 12 billion. Defense grid, the most advanced in the galaxy. Duration of battle, 47 minutes. Park watched in stunned silence as the footage showed the crystal cities of the Vorthok crumbling like sandcastles. Their energy shields, which could deflect the power of small stars, flickered and died under the relentless assault of geometric black ships that moved like schools of mechanical fish. The Nexari Collective attempted to mount a defense at the Spiral Nebula. The recording continued. 400 ships, each one the size of a small moon. They managed to destroy exactly 3 Devourer units before being overwhelmed.
Ow.
The screen showed the aftermath of that battle, a debris field stretching across light years, filled with the twisted remains of the galaxy's most advanced warships. The Nexari, with their hive mind coordination and biotechnology that could reshape matter itself, had been swept aside like insects. The Luxari home system fell in 6 hours, Park muttered, remembering the energy beings who had mocked humanity's primitive weapons just months ago. Their quantum barriers meant nothing. The footage was devastating. The Luxari beings of pure energy who existed partially outside normal space-time had been consumed by machines that somehow fed on their very essence. Their brilliant light, which had illuminated entire star systems, was now trapped in dark collection arrays that pulsed with stolen radiance. Navigation Officer Kim Hyun-woo looked up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, I'm tracking the Devourer's movement pattern. They're not random. They're following the major hyperspace routes, consuming everything along the way." Park studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The pattern was clear now. The Devourers were moving through the galaxy like a harvesting machine, following the same routes that connected all the major civilizations. And at the end of one of those routes, Earth, whispered Lee So-young. They're heading straight for the Sol system. Communications Officer Han Min-ho suddenly straightened at his console. "We're receiving a priority message from the Confederation. It's addressed specifically to Earth's government." "Put it through." The holographic display shifted, showing what remained of the Galactic Council. Only a handful of representatives were present, their usual arrogance replaced by desperate fear. Counselor Veltherin spoke directly to the camera, his voice carrying across the void. "To the primitive species of Earth," he began, the old condescension creeping back into his voice even in the face of extinction. "The Devourer swarm has consumed 47 star systems. Their trajectory will bring them through your solar system. In approximately 21 standard days, we recommend immediate evacuation of all populated worlds." Park read the full message as it scrolled across his personal display, his anger growing with each word. Not a request for aid, not a call to arms, not even an invitation to join the defense efforts. Just a simple warning to run like frightened children. "Evacuation?" Park's voice carried across the bridge, causing every officer to look up from there. "Stations, they expect us to abandon our home without a fight." Sir Lee So-young pulled up tactical displays, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "Based on the Devourer's current speed and trajectory, they'll reach the outer system in 22 days, 17 hours. The main force will arrive at Earth's orbit in 24 days, 6 hours. Park stared at the star charts, his mind racing through possibilities. 3 weeks to prepare for an enemy that had crushed civilizations with technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. The galaxy's greatest powers had fallen like dominoes, their advanced shields and exotic weapons, proving useless against the ancient machines. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Every officer waited for their admiral's decision, knowing that the fate of humanity might rest on his next words. Sir Han Min-ho said quietly, "The Confederation is sending evacuation coordinates. They're offering to transport human refugees to designated safe zones in the Outer Rim." Park looked at the coordinates, then at the faces of his crew. These were the same aliens who had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons, who had dismissed Earth's military as cave dwellers playing with sticks. Now they expected humanity to run and hide while they faced extinction. "Belay that evacuation order," Park commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. "Contact all defense stations, all military commands, and every ship in the fleet. Send a message to Mars Command, Luna Base, and the outer colonies." Sir Lee So-young asked, though her eyes were already gleaming with understanding. Park turned to face the main display, where the image of approaching Devourer ships cast dark shadows across the bridge. "Tell them the Earth Defense Force is not running. Tell them we're going to war." The bridge erupted in activity as officers began implementing orders they had never imagined they would receive. In the depths of space, ancient machines continued. their inexorable advance toward a small blue world, whose inhabitants were about to prove that. Sometimes the most primitive weapons were wielded by the most dangerous minds. Captain Odong-wook gripped the control stick of his stealth frigate as it drifted silently through the asteroid belt. The Shadow Runner was painted matte black and equipped with experimental cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible against the star-filled void. Around him, his crew worked with deadly precision, turning innocent chunks of space rock into hidden weapons of mass destruction. "Careful with that one," O called out to his demolitions expert as she guided a massive fusion warhead into a hollowed-out asteroid. "If that thing goes off early, we'll be nothing but atoms scattered." Across the belt, weapons specialist Kim Hyojin looked up from her work, sweat beading on her forehead despite the ship's climate control. "This is the last one, Captain." 2,000 fusion charges scattered throughout the belt, all linked to the central fire control system on Mars. She sealed the warhead inside the asteroid and activated its camouflage field. Within seconds, the deadly package looked like just another piece of space debris. "The beauty of it," said systems analyst Choi Jae-sung, pulling up holographic displays of the Devourer fleet patterns, "is that their own tactical data helped us plan this trap. Look at these movement recordings from their previous attacks." The hologram showed the mechanical swarm advancing through star systems in perfect geometric formations. Each ship held its position with mathematical precision, following approach vectors that maximized their firepower while minimizing energy expenditure. Their machines, O realized, watching the patterns. Pure logic, no creativity. They can't imagine an enemy that would mine empty space because it's not tactically efficient. "Exactly," Choi nodded. "Every civilization they faced has tried to meet them head-on with superior technology. Energy shields, directed energy weapons, quantum barriers, but nobody's ever tried to simply blow them up with hidden bombs." It smiled grimly as his ship completed its final sweep of the asteroid belt. Behind them, 2,000 nuclear mines waited in perfect silence, each one disguised as worthless space rock. The Devourers would fly right into the biggest minefield in human history. Back on Earth, General Yoon Tae-ho stood in the bustling command center beneath Seoul, surrounded by screens showing the frantic preparations across the solar system. The room buzzed with activity as officers coordinated what might be humanity's last stand. Report from Luna Base called out Major Song Ji-hoon from the communication station. "All 50 railgun installations are online and loaded. Using tungsten projectiles accelerated to 15% light speed. Mars Command confirms fusion missile batteries are ready," added Colonel Park Myung. 300 warheads, each one capable of cracking a small moon. Yoon nodded, but his expression remained grim. Even with all their preparations, humanity was facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations with technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. The Vorthok had possessed energy shields that could deflect the power of stars. The next had commanded fleets of bioships that could regenerate from any damage. All of them had fallen. "Jupiter Station reports that all observation posts are operational," reported Lieutenant Lee Dong-hyun. "They'll give us advance warning when the Devourers enter the outer system." "Good," Yoon said, studying the tactical displays. "They're treating this like a conventional siege. Energy barriers, coordinated advance patterns, overwhelming technological superiority. But we're not fighting their war, we're fighting ours." In the Cyber Warfare Division, Dr. Lim Hae-won worked frantically at a bank of quantum computers, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces that most people couldn't even see clearly. Around her, screens showed cascading code that looked more like abstract art than programming. "The virus is ready, General," she announced, not looking up from her work. "I've analyzed the Devourer network architecture from the intelligence data we captured. Use a distributed consciousness across their entire fleet. If ship is both individual and part of a collective mind." "How does that help us?" Yoon asked. "Because their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness," Lim explained, pulling up a simulation. "They share information instantaneously across their entire network. If we can introduce a virus into their system, it should spread through their fleet like wildfire. But there's a catch. We need someone to get close enough to their command ship to plant it. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Getting close to the Devourer command ship would be a suicide mission. Their escort vessels would tear apart any approaching craft long before it could deliver the virus. "I'll do it," volunteered Commander Bang Hyansu, stepping forward from where he'd been observing the preparations. His fighter squadron was legendary in the Earth Defense Force if anyone could punch through the Devourer's perimeter. It was him. "Hyansu, this is a one-way trip," Yoon said quietly. "I know," Bang replied, his face set with grim determination. "But if this virus works, it might give us the edge we need. My squadron can create a distraction while I slip through their defenses." Suddenly, alarms wailed across the command center. Long-range sensors had detected movement at the edge of the solar system, dark shapes emerging from hyperspace like nightmares made manifest. "They're here," whispered Major Song, his voice barely audible over the klaxons. The main display lit up with sensor data that made everyone's blood run cold. Thousands of geometric ships moved in perfect formation. There, dark hulls seeming to absorb light like hungry mouths. Each vessel was a masterpiece of predatory design, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and collection arrays that could drain the life from entire star systems. Humanity's defense force, scattered across the solar system, seemed pathetically small in comparison. Few hundred ships, most of them converted civilian vessels, against an armada that had consumed civilizations spanning the galaxy. "All stations, this is Admiral Park," came the voice over the communications system, broadcast. "To every ship, every station, every human outpost from Mercury to Pluto, they think we're primitives. They've dismissed us as cave dwellers playing with sticks and stones." Park's voice carried across the void, reaching Captain O as he positioned his stealth frigate near the asteroid belt's trigger point. Reaching Dr. Lim as she made final adjustments to her digital weapon, reaching Commander Bang as he strapped himself into his fighter's cockpit. "Well, they're right about one thing," Park continued, his voice growing stronger. "We are primitives. We fight with explosives and kinetic weapons. We use tricks and traps instead of energy shields. We're chaotic, unpredictable, and we don't follow the rules of civilized warfare." In the command center, General Yoon watched the tactical display as the Devourer fleet approached the outer system. Their formation was perfect, their advance unstoppable, their victory seemingly inevitable. But they forgot something important about primitives. Park's voice echoed across the solar system. "We're the ones who survived when bigger, stronger species went extinct. We're the ones who turned fire into a weapon, who threw the first spear, who split the first atom. We didn't get to the top of the food chain by being civilized." The Devourer fleet continued its advance, their sensors detecting the small human force ahead of them. In their mechanical minds, they calculated the minimal energy required to sweep aside this primitive resistance. They had no idea they were flying into the most elaborate trap in human history. The silence of space shattered as the Devourer fleet crossed into the outer reaches of the Sol system. Commander Bang Hyansu gripped the controls of his fighter, the Viper, as he watched the enemy formation approach through his cockpit display. Behind him, 23 other pilots from the legendary Ghost Squadron waited for his signal. "Ghost, leader to all units," Bang transmitted over the secure channel. "Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to buy time and create chaos. Make them think we're the main threat." The Devourer ships moved like a mechanical ballet, each vessel maintaining perfect position relative to the others. Their hulls were geometric nightmares of black metal, covered in sensor arrays that glowed with malevolent red light. The largest ships were the size of small cities, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. "All Ghost Squadron fighters, attack pattern Delta," Bang commanded. "Let's show these machines what human pilots can do." The fighters screamed forward, their fusion engines leaving trails of blue fire across the void. They were tiny compared to the Devourer vessels, like mosquitoes attacking elephants. But they moved with a grace and unpredictability that the mechanical minds couldn't fully comprehend. Deep in the asteroid belt, Captain Oh Dong-wook watched the tactical display from his stealth frigate. The Devourers were advancing exactly as predicted, their formation tight and disciplined. Perfect targets for the trap he'd spent weeks preparing. Weapons control? This is Shadowrunner. O spoke into his communicator. Packages are in position. Initiating sequence on my mark. The first wave of Devourer ships entered the belt, their sensors scanning for threats. They detected the asteroid debris, cataloged it as harmless space junk, and continued their advance. Their mechanical minds couldn't imagine that primitives would be clever enough to hide weapons in empty space. Mark, O whispered. The asteroid belt exploded. Nuclear fire bloomed across the void like deadly flowers, each explosion bright enough to blind unprotected eyes. 2,000 fusion warheads detonated in perfect sequence, their timing calculated to catch the maximum. Number of enemy ships in the overlapping blast zones. The Devourer's perfect formation wavered as entire. Sections of their fleet simply vanished in balls of atomic fire. Ships that had survived the death of civilizations were torn apart by humanity's most primitive weapon, controlled nuclear fusion wrapped in tungsten and hidden in rocks. Direct hit on their advance guard, shouted Lieutenant Jung Yun-soo from the Indomitable's tactical station, her voice cracking with excitement. Confirmed kills on at least 200 enemy vessels. They're breaking formation. Admiral Park watched the battle unfold from his command chair, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. The asteroid belt gambit had worked better than anyone had dared hope, but he knew the Devourers would adapt quickly. Don't celebrate yet, Park warned his bridge crew. They're machines. They learn from every mistake. As if responding to his words, the surviving Devourer ships began to spread out, abandoning their tight formations for a more cautious advance. Energy beams lanced through space, seeking out human vessels with surgical precision. The Defiant, one of Earth's newest cruisers, took a direct hit and exploded in a shower of metal and flame. Mars, batteries, fire, Park commanded. The red planets. Surface erupted in light as massive railguns hurled tungsten projectiles at impossible velocities. The projectiles were simple chunks of metal, but they moved at 15% the speed of light. Carrying kinetic energy that could shatter mountains, the Devourer's energy shields, designed to deflect directed energy weapons and exotic matter, proved useless against simple kinetic force. The tungsten slugs punched through their barriers like bullets through tissue paper, tearing gaping holes in ships that had seemed invincible. Their shields can't stop solid matter, reported Commander Kim Jamin from Mars Command. The projectiles are going right through. In the chaos of battle, Commander Bang Haeonsu wove his fighter through a maze of enemy fire. His ship's hull scarred by near misses from energy weapons. His squadron had been reduced to half strength, but they'd accomplished their mission, drawing the Devourer's attention away from the real threat. Ghost Leader to all units, Bang transmitted, his voice steady despite the alarms screaming in his cockpit. Form up on me. We're going for the command ship. The massive Devourer mothership loomed ahead, a triangular nightmare of black metal and glowing sensors. It was protected by a screen of smaller vessels, their weapons creating a web of deadly energy beams. Sir, that's suicide, protested Lieutenant Park Young-ho, his fighter smoking from battle damage. Maybe, Bang replied, checking his weapon systems. But Dr. Lim's virus needs to get into their main computer core. This is our only chance. The remaining Ghost Squadron fighters dove toward the command ship, their engines pushed beyond safety limits. Enemy fire found them one by one. Lieutenant Song exploded in a ball of flame. Sergeant Kim's fighter cartwheeled out of control with its wings sheared off. Captain Lee's ship simply vanished in a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Bangs. Fighter shuddered as enemy fire found its mark, alarms screaming as his life support systems began to fail. But he was close now, close enough to see the command ship's hull details, close enough to target its main data port. I'm approaching their command ship, Bang shouted over the comm system, deploying cyber warfare package. His ship lurched as another energy beam grazed his port wing, sending him into a spin. Warning lights flashed red across his instrument panel, and he could taste blood in his mouth. But his targeting computer had locked onto the enemy vessel's data core. Bang! Screamed, firing his single data torpedo. The torpedo was a simple device, just a computer core wrapped in armor and propelled by a chemical rocket. But it carried Dr. Lim Haewan's virus, humanity's secret weapon against the Devourer's networked consciousness. Bang's fighter exploded in a ball of flame as enemy fire finally found its mark. But his torpedo continued on its trajectory, punching through the command ship's hull and embedding itself in the main data core. In the cyber warfare division beneath Seoul, Dr. Lim Haewan watched her monitors with desperate intensity. "Come on," she whispered, her hands trembling as she waited for confirmation that the virus had been delivered. Suddenly, her screens lit up with cascading code. The virus was active, spreading through the Devourer network like wildfire. Ship in their fleet was connected to the others, sharing information instantaneously across their collective consciousness. It was their greatest advantage, and now it was their greatest weakness. "It's working," Lim shouted, her voice echoing through the command center. "The virus is spreading through their network. They're losing coordination." On the main tactical display, the impossible began to happen. Devourer ships started firing on their own allies, their targeting computers corrupted by the malicious code. The perfect formation that had swept across the galaxy began to collapse as ships turned against each other in a frenzy of friendly fire. "My God," whispered General Yoon, watching the enemy fleet tear itself apart. "They're actually doing it. They're winning." The Devourer's greatest strength, their perfect coordination and networked consciousness, had become their fatal weakness. Dr. Lim's virus didn't just disrupt their systems. It turned their own weapons against them, creating chaos in the mechanical minds that could only think in terms of logic and order. Commander Bang Hyansu's sacrifice had not been in vain. The primitives were fighting back, and they were winning. Virus spread through the Devourer fleet like digital wildfire, turning their perfect coordination into deadly chaos. Ship after ship began firing on their own allies, their targeting systems corrupted by Dr. Lim's malicious code. But even as their network collapsed, the surviving machines recognized the threat and began to retreat. Captain Oh Dong-wook from his battered stealth frigate as hundreds of Devourer ships broke formation and fled toward the outer system. His vessel was scarred from battle, its hull peppered with holes from energy weapons, but its engines still functioned. "Not so fast," Oh muttered, activating his communications array. "All remaining units, this is Shadowrunner. Execute containment. Protocol." Across the solar system, the surviving human forces moved into position. O had spent weeks studying the Devourer's tactical patterns, learning how they thought, how they moved, how they retreated. He'd positioned his ships not just to defend Earth, but to trap the enemy when they inevitably tried to escape. Tiger Squadron blocked the hyperspace jump points near Jupiter, O commanded. Wolfpack, cover the main shipping lanes. Nobody gets out of this system alive. The fleeing Devourer ships found their escape routes blocked by human vessels that seemed to appear from nowhere. Converted cargo haulers armed with nuclear torpedoes, mining ships equipped with industrial lasers, even luxury yachts fitted with missile pods. Every vessel that could fly and fight had been pressed into service. All units pursue and destroy. Admiral Park's voice echoed across the comm channels. Don't let a single one escape to threaten another world. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships, battered and outnumbered, hunted down the fleeing machines. With relentless determination, the Devourers were faster, stronger, more advanced, but they were also confused, isolated, and for the first time in a million years, truly afraid. Lieutenant Commander Lee So-young coordinated the pursuit from the Indomitable, her tactical display, showing dozens of small engagements across the solar system. Enemy vessel attempting to reach hyperspace near Saturn, she reported. Intercepted by Martian Defense Force frigate Resilience. Confirmed kill, came the reply from Captain Yoon Mi-suk aboard the Resilience. Target destroyed with nuclear torpedo strike. The hunting continued for hours, human ships chasing down every fleeing Devourer vessel. What had begun as humanity's darkest hour had become their greatest triumph. The same species that had been dismissed as primitives were systematically destroying an enemy that had consumed civilizations across the galaxy. Final target acquired, announced Commander Park Jin-woo from his fighter squadron. last devourer ship attempting to hide in the Kuiper Belt? Take it down, Park ordered grimly. The last enemy vessel exploded in a brief flash of light, its destruction marking the end of the Devourer's million-year reign of terror. The ancient machines that had awakened to consume another galaxy had been stopped by the very species they had dismissed as beneath notice. As the battle smoke cleared, emergency transmissions began arriving from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, monitoring the battle from their distant retreats through long-range sensors, could hardly believe what they were seeing. On the crystal world of the Sara, Counselor Veltheron stared at the tactical recordings in stunned silence. His compound eyes reflected the impossible truth the humans had won. He whispered, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. They defeated the Devourers with explosives and computer viruses. Around the council chamber, other representatives struggled to process what they had witnessed. The Luxury energy being flickered with confused patterns of light. The Nexury collective writhed in agitation, their hive mind unable to comprehend how such primitive tactics had succeeded where their advanced technology had failed. They turned our own intelligence against us, observed the Vorthok Crystal Singer, his voice resonating with newfound respect. They studied the Devourer's patterns, learned their weaknesses, and exploited them with crude but effective methods. Back aboard, the indomitable ambassador Kim Jae-ho received the Council's formal communication with quiet dignity. The same aliens who had mocked humanity's primitive weapons now spoke with voices trembling with awe and gratitude. Ambassador Kim, Counselor Veltheron, began. His tone completely changed from their last meeting. On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, we formally apologize for our ... previous assessments of your species' capabilities. We wish to extend an invitation for humanity to join our Emergency Defense Council. Kim smiled slightly, remembering the humiliation he had endured in the Crystal Halls just months ago. Perhaps, he said, you underestimated what primitives can accomplish when their backs are against the wall. Within weeks, delegations from across the galaxy arrived at Earth, no longer as condescending superiors, but as students eager to learn. The same species that had dismissed humanity's crude weapons now begged to understand their tactical innovations. The ethereals, beings of pure thought who had always relied on mental powers, wanted to learn about human intuition and creativity. The shapers, masters of gravity manipulation, studied humanity's use of simple kinetic weapons. Even the timekeepers, who existed partially outside normal time, were fascinated by human adaptability. General Yoon Taho established the Solar Military Academy on Luna, where alien cadets learned the art of asymmetric warfare. The first lesson was simple. Advanced technology means nothing if you can't think beyond its limitations. Observe, Yoon told a class of mixed alien students, showing them footage of the asteroid belt ambush. The Devourers had sensors that could detect energy signatures across light years. But they couldn't imagine enemies hiding weapons in what appeared to be worthless space debris. In the Cyber Warfare Division, Dr. Lim Hae-won found herself teaching the galaxy's most advanced AI specialists how to think like hackers. Her virus techniques became standard doctrine throughout the Confederation fleet. The key, she explained to a group of Nexari programmers, is not to fight the system head-on. If you find the weakness, exploit it and turn the enemy's strength against them. Admiral Park stood before a gathering of galactic military leaders in the rebuilt council chambers. His Earth Defense Force uniform a stark contrast to the exotic forms around him. The same hall where humanity had been mocked now hosted lectures on human military doctrine. We didn't win because we were more advanced, Park explained, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We won because we thought differently. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective one. The Devourers had been defeated not by superior technology, but by humanity's greatest weapons: creativity, adaptability, and the refusal to accept defeat. They had faced an enemy that followed perfect logic and defeated them. With controlled chaos, Earth was no longer the galaxy's backwater. It had become its guardian, its military academy. Its last hope against the unknown threats that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. The primitives had saved the galaxy, proving that sometimes the most advanced civilizations were those that remembered. how to think like their ancestors, as the first graduating class of alien cadets received their certificates from the Solar Military Academy. They carried with them a new understanding. True strength came not from perfect technology, but from the willingness to fight with whatever tools were available, to think beyond conventional wisdom, and to never surrender in the face of impossible odds. The galaxy had learned to fear the Devourers for 1,000,000 years. Now they had learned to respect the humans who had sent them back to the void, armed with nothing but nuclear weapons, computer viruses, and the kind of stubborn determination that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. The primitives had become the protectors, and the galaxy was safer for it. The end.